Oh, hello. You must be that new adventurer they said would be coming my way. Glad you found Honorsden easily enough, I hope. I am Grand Scholar Cassius Stone. I am tasked with helping newcomers like yourself to understand the world that you now find yourself in. I'm sure you're quite curious. What exactly is Alterra? Well, Alterra is a high fantasy medieval live-action role-playing game. It centers around the use of small and powerful talismans, known as glyphs. These glyphs have runes inscribed on them, and are infused with the ability to grant wondrous powers to those who attune them to their souls. We will, of course, go into depth with that a bit later, unless you wish to attend one of my classes. Anyway, so, when you want to get started, where do you begin? The rulebook is vast, full of untold knowledge, but can be daunting for those just getting their feet wet. First off, we need to decide, what race are you? Alterra has 12 player races. There are 3 kinds of human, 3 kinds of elf, or as we call them here, Vel, 3 kinds of dwarf, or as they are known, Thol, and 3 kinds of divergent races. These are more unique. They are the satyrs, dryads, and the goblinoids. To start, we have the humans. We have the Imperial, the Village, and the Nomads. The Imperial humans dwell in the larger kingdom cities, while the villagers keep to their small, more rural, traditional villages peppered around the landscape. Finally, the nomadic humans, tribal in nature, tend to move from place to place, rarely in the same place twice. The 3 kinds of Vel. The Ao Vel, which are the high elves, as you may know them. They delve into magic and all kinds of academic research, again staying in their nice, fine cities with their high towers. We have the Myron Vel. These are the wood elves. They're a reclusive bunch. They stick to their well-kept groves. And then we have the Zinvel. The Zinvel are exiled elves. They bear a mark of shame. A long time ago, let's just say there's bad blood between them. We'll have that discussion some other time. No need to worry you with politics on your first day. The 3 types of Thol. The Drinthol, or the mountain dwarf, as I'm sure you can tell, live in the highest peaks and the deepest chasms of ravines. We have the Fenthol, the hill dwarves. Unlike typical dwarves, they make their homes amidst the rolling plains, the grasslands, with the open air over their head. And then we have the Custhol. These are the deep dwarves. They go deeper than any Drinthol would dare to dig. They have an eye for perfection, though. Their jewelcraft is second to none. Let's see. I guess that just leaves the Divergent Races. The satyrs, as you may expect, are half man or woman, half goat, sheep, ram, sometimes deer even. They do like to party, but they can be stoic and stalwart companions in that time of need. We have the dryads. These strange, fey-like creatures come from the trees in the very world around us. Every dryad has a tree that they can call home, but they can gain power from any. And then, of course, we have the goblinoids. Goblinoids are perhaps the most diverse race in Alterra. They have skin colors ranging from greens, yellows, browns, grays, anything in between. Picture, if you will, an elf, but slightly disfigured, or maybe an orc, or a troll, or an ogre. All of these are possible to be found in goblinoid society, but do not let that fool you. A goblinoid is as cunning as any elf, as industrious as even the best imperial human, and have the military might of the strongest dwarven armies. Let's see. Well, now that we've figured out what you are, we should figure out how you are. How do you separate yourself from others of your kind? Well, most games would have, perhaps, racial bonuses, and there are racial traits for each race, I should mention. For example, and this will make more sense with the stats, but humans are superior with focus. Imperials, villagers, and nomads are all apt with focus gain. The Vel excel with mana, the Thol with health, and the Divergent Races, well, they're unique. They start with 1 additional life, which brings them up to 4 from the usual 3 that the other races have. But as I was saying, there's a list in Alterra called the Characteristic List. Every player begins with 3 points. You must spend these points at character creation. This cannot be undone, and it cannot be refunded. Your choice here is final. There are 1-point skills, 2-point skills, and 3-point skills. You may choose to purchase 1-point skills up to, of course, 3 times. 2-point skills only once, of course, and 3 points only once, but you can mix and match. A 2-point and a 1-pointer, 3 1-pointers, or a single 3-pointer. Now, there are some exceptions and special technicalities here. First off, every race, this is sub-race, has their own unique characteristic. For example, village humans have rationer, nomadic humans have forager, and imperial humans have well-rounded. We'll talk more about well-rounded in a moment, but you do not automatically gain these unique characteristics. No, you must still purchase them, and they have a cost, but you can only purchase it if you are of the appropriate race. As I mentioned, there is a bit of a caveat with well-rounded. Well-rounded is free. If you play an Imperial human, you do get it automatically. And what it does is reduces the point cost of 1, 2, or 3-point characteristic once. However, if you were to reduce a 2-point characteristic to costing only 1, you cannot purchase that multiple times. You can only purchase it once. However, it would only cost 1, so you'd still have a couple of points to play with. Just something to think about. Moving on, I mentioned the stats. Like with many games, the stats are simple, but crucial to gameplay. We have, of course, health, which is the core fundamental way you survive in the game world. So long as you have health, you're alive. But something to consider, the way Alterra handles health is a bit different than most games. Instead of having a singular health pool that you are whittled away from with every hit, no matter where it hits you, you have specific areas on the body, namely the torso, each arm, and each leg. Each of these has its own health value. Starting, the torso has 4, each arm has 3, and each leg has 3. When you lose the hit points in one of your limbs, it is considered broken. When you lose all of the hit points in your torso, you are considered incapacitated and downed. You can lose all 4 limbs and still be conscious, although in a bit of pain, I'm sure. So protecting your core is of the utmost importance. This may sound like quite a bit to follow, but I assure you in practice it is far easier than it sounds. Moving on. We of course have mana. In any world with magic, mana is surely present. This is no different for Alterra. You begin play with 10 mana, and this mana is used to fuel any spell-like abilities you may have. You may even be such a character that you don't use mana, but you will still have it. Similarly, there is focus. Focus is like physical mana. You would use this for physical skills and abilities. Note that basic attacks with weapons do not consume focus. Only using skills does. Then we have slots, and this is a unique one for Alterra. In Alterra, as I mentioned, there are glyphs. Different glyphs have different slot costs. You begin play with only a limited amount, and through a special ritual called the Ritual of Attunement, you will have these glyphs bound to your very soul, and therefore gain the benefits, whether they be active or passive. You can purchase more slots as you level up, as you can with any other stat, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The last stat is Radiance. Radiance is... how would I put this simply? You are a newcomer. It is like a measure of your soul's strength, gained over time through trial and hardship. As you attend game and through various means, you can acquire Radiance. Upon reaching certain thresholds, you will gain experience, a set amount per level up. You can spend this by being taught by other players or from skill tomes to learn new abilities from the various ways and paths, which we will get to. Another note, when leveling up, every 5 levels, you will gain a free stat increase from the Universal Way. You may pick one. And while the Universal Way has an incremental cost increase associated with the stats, this freebie never influences it. Keep that in mind. But moving on. So I mentioned this Universal Way. The ways and paths in Alterra are more of an archetypal idea. We don't have classes per se, although you could consider the ways classes and paths subclasses. However, there's no restrictions on learning these outside of the Way of the Faithful, but we'll get there. So, you start play with 25 experience to spend. Your first way is free, and your first path is free as well. After that, your second way will cost you 10 experience, your third 15, fourth 20, fifth 25. However, your paths will always cost you 10. There is no increase in the cost. As you pick your ways and paths, you're going to gain proficiencies. Proficiencies are very important in Alterra. I'll go over this more in depth in another lesson, but the idea is you can use any equipment you like in the game. However, without the appropriate proficiency, you'll be severely limited in what you're able to do with it. To give a basic idea, if you were, let's say, a wizard, and you picked up a bow, you could use that bow, but you will only ever deal the minimum possible damage that weapon can deal. You will, even if you had a bow that was superior craftsmanship, with all sorts of enchantments upon it, you will only deal the base damage. But anyway. So, the Universal Way. You need not purchase this, and you can buy things from it whenever you have the experience to do so. You need not be taught by anyone else. As you do, the cost of these things will increase. Now, if you were to buy health, that would not increase the cost of mana or focus or slots. Only when you buy each one will its own cost increase to a maximum of 30, at which point subsequent purchases will cost 30 every time. From here, we have the primary ways. Way of the Combatant, focusing on melee fighting. Within it, the Path of the Swift, focusing on one-handed combat. Path of the Titan, focusing on two-handed combat. And Path of the Colossus, which focuses on larger two-handed weapons and shafted weapons. Things in the range of 60 to 72 inches, if you're curious. After that, for the tanks, we have the Way of the Defender. Within this, we have the Path of the Bulwark, focusing on larger shields and utilizing them better. We have the Path of the Conditioned, which hones the body into both an insurmountable defense and a potent offense. And then we have the Path of the Adorned, which heightens your use of armor and its usefulness to you. Next up, Way of the Marksman. This focuses on ranged weapon in combat. We have the Path of the Unearring, focusing on bows, the Path of the Nimble, focusing on thrown weapons, and the Path of the Hunter, focusing on tracking and ways to bring down your quarry. After that, there's the Way of the Shadowed. This focuses for those people who like to do their work undetected, take out their foes before they have a chance to retaliate. You know the sort. Within this, we have the path of the cloak, focusing on stealth increase and thievery. We have the path of the dagger, focusing on more combative applications, the use of daggers and assassination skills. And then we have the path of the saboteur, which focuses on traps and the such. After that, we have a couple of more unique ways. There's the way of the Magister. Now, when starting out, there is a list of glyphs that are called starting glyphs. You can purchase these at a cost of 3 experience each. Certain glyphs have certain denotations. You will need certain glyphs of certain types attuned in order to have access to certain abilities from the path of the Magister. The paths within the way of the Magister. Within the way of the Magister, we have the path of the Evoker, focusing on damaging spells, the path of the Binder, focusing on crowd control and statuses, and the path of the Transient, which focuses on movement skills and abilities, and moving enemies even. If you wanted to have, say, 2 active abilities from the path of the Evoker, you would need 2 spell glyphs attuned that are damage-dealing spell glyphs. Moving on, we have the Way of the Faithful. This is perhaps the most complex way in Alterra. This is supernatural-based, focusing on the light and the void, which are both supernatural and religious forces in the world. But just by taking this way does not mean that you are innately a religious character. It just means that you believe in the supernatural forces that pervade our universe. There is a skill in the base way known as Devotion, and you will pick a singular god. You may only purchase this once. This is required to access the paths of light, void, or balance within this way. Similarly to way of the Magister, the paths within the Way of the Faithful require you to have a certain number of glyphs attuned of the appropriate type, be they light, void, or both. Note, however, if you were to access the path of light, you will never be able to access the path of void or balance. Similarly, if you take the path of void, you can never access the path of light or balance. And if you go down the path of balance, you will never be able to access the paths of light or void. Moving on. We have the Way of the Scholar, which is something I'm quite versed in myself. In this we have the path of the Doctor, the path of the Locksmith, and the path of the Venomous. The path of the Doctor focuses on non-magical healing methods. The path of the Locksmith on, of course, working with locks. The path of the Venomous focuses on the applicational use of the various toxins that the path of toxicology in the Way of the Alchemist could make. We have the Way of the Gatherer, which is somewhat unique. Resources can be sought out in the world and gathered in Alterra. The Way of the Gatherer enhances your yields and chances at getting rare goods. Within this are the path of rock, plant, and rare. Each one, rock for mining and minerals, plant for any kind of plant natural good, and rare for more unique quarry. Moving on, we have the crafting ways. We have the Way of the Alchemist, with the path of Hermetics, Incendiaries, and Toxicology. Hermetics focuses on useful potions and interesting concoctions, health potions, focus potions, perhaps a chameleon tonic to hide something. Path of Incendiaries, focusing on making explosives, and Path of Toxicology focuses on producing poisons and antidotes to them. After this, we have the Way of the Inscriptionist, which is, again, something a bit unique to Alterra. We have the Path of the Essence Weaver, which uses a mysterious, mystical substance known as essence, which is basically condensed mana, to produce wondrous effects and enchant things like wands. We have the Path of the Ritualist, which focuses on more long-winded spell-like abilities, great rituals, sometimes requiring more than one practitioner. And then we have the path of the Rune Scribe, which uses crystal and essence from the Essence Weaver, along with deep studying of the runic language of glyphs to produce more glyphs that they've already learned how to make so that more adventurers can benefit from what they know. After this is the Way of the Smith, focusing on long-lasting goods, armor, weapons, and such. Of course, there's the Path of the Armor Smith, focusing on crafting and repairing armor, and shields, of course. We have the Path of the Weaponsmith, focusing on making all sorts of armaments of war, implements of death, and repairing them, keeping them in top form. And then we have the Path of the Whitesmith, which focuses on making trinkets and baubles and adding sockets to armor. They can also make quite great instruments. There is, of course, worlds more I could go into when talking about our lovely world of Alterra. And I would be more than happy to, believe you me. I hold multiple classes throughout the month. I highly recommend signing up for at least one. If nothing else, the more you understand about the world you're in, the better chance you have of surviving it. But I won't keep you any longer. I've kept you long enough, I'm sure. No one wants to listen to an old scholar ramble. So, until next time, be safe.